welcome to Emily Kate Made This, episode 31. I was going to make this a kind of different episode, talking about my January yarn stash busting, but I haven't got enough really to talk about just for that. So I'm just going to merge it with this one. So if you are new, welcome. This is a knitting, sewing, crafty channel. And if you are returning, welcome back. You may have seen my January video all about tackling the stash. I have a lot of yarn, glorious, lovely yarn, and I wanted to actually knit with it. I wanted actually first to get a grasp of how much I really had and did it have any plans to go alongside with it. Then I discovered I have a lot. If you haven't watched it, I'll link it somewhere and you can have a look. There's a lot of yarn, and as I mentioned in that video, it is a lot of yarn in my opinion, but it's not like I'm not grateful for it, and it's not like I think it's too much and I've got to get rid of it. It's more that I want to just enjoy it and make plans and have fun with it. And I have no intention of using it all in 1 year. That would be mad, but it's just fun to see what you have, make plans with it, and enjoy it going down, and then not feel guilty because you find something new, like a new yarn, and you buy it, but then you don't cast it on immediately because you've got 100 other plans, and then it just goes into the stash and gets all sad and lonely. So that's why. So I did, in my opinion, I did pretty well this month. I will show you. So I wrote out everything in this book that I had, and then I wrote a January in and a January out. When I calculated this in my last episode, I had included what came in January because I ordered it in, I think it was like the 31st of December. So it arrived in January. So I just added it in and then I included it within my big calculation. So according to here, I had 25 kilos, 928 grams of yarn at the beginning of this year. So in January, the only thing that I actually added into my stash was the sleeves from this jumper. If you recall, I made this jumper last year. Let me stand up a bit. This is the Salty Air Tea by Samantha Guerin. I'll put a picture. And I used a beautiful yarn, which a lot of you have asked me about on Instagram. It is Yarnhome. It's a Lithuanian company, and it's the pumpkin colour from lambswool, New Zealand lambswool. From? Let's start that again. Company, Yarnhome, yarn, New Zealand lambswool, colour, pumpkin. And I wanted to use every single teeny weeny scrap of this yarn, so I just knitted until it ran out. But the sleeves ended about here, and so when I bent my arm it would go up, and I was an idiot, and I made the cuffs the same size as if they were at my wrist. And although my arms are small, this part is not the same as here, and it was so uncomfortable, but I wanted to use all the yarn. So just kind of did it to myself really. And it wasn't that I put myself off wearing it, but I hadn't worn it for a while. And then I put it on a couple of days ago, just actually I think on the 30th of January. And I was so annoyed because these sleeves, they were just crushing here, and then they'd push up, and then it would push all this fabric up and do this, and oh, it annoyed me. So I ripped them out. It was painful because I remember knitting this and thinking, if I was following the pattern, I would be done by now, but I'm just going to keep knitting these sleeves, and I could have been done because I ripped them out anyway. But now they're a much nicer length and much baggier, and I am thrilled, delighted with this length now. I haven't blocked it since I did it, so it might look a bit funny, but yeah, love this jumper, or tee technically. I did do size 2, and so it is bigger. It's also a sport weight yarn instead of a fingering weight, because the label that comes with this says it's fingering weight, but it's obviously sport. So yeah, then I went up a size and up yarn, so of course it came out a bit too big, but I don't care because I really like it. So that was 20 grams of yarn that went back into my stash, but then I counteracted that because I knitted some additional sleeves. I know I mentioned at some point on one of my videos that have been recently published that I wanted to adjust the sleeves on my Easter Bunny jumper. This one is also from Yarnhome. There's a theme to this video now I think about it. Oh, hello sun. Oh, we're getting sunshine. It's been so long. So just enjoy this moment. Okay, so yeah, there's a theme to this podcast because I'm going to talk about Lithuanian Yarn Company a lot. This one is apparently Cardigan. I know I sound a little bit like I'm dissing this company, and I'm not, because I genuinely love all of the wool and all the colours that they have, and therefore I love this company. But I do have to say that the descriptions are somewhat misleading. Like lace fingering weight yarn, but then the meterage is sport weight. And then my cardigan I recently made was a DK weight, but came out at like pretty much bulky weight in meterage. So, and this one is apparently Cardigan. I don't know if you'll be able to see. It's incredibly fluffy. Whenever I've seen other people's knits with Cardigan, it doesn't look like this, and it's so itchy. It's the itchiest yarn that I have, but simultaneously it is so soft. It's like stroking a rabbit. It's so soft. But as you can see with all these hairs, it's like stabby at the same time. And it's incredibly warm. And the problem I gave myself with this was kind of the opposite to this one, where I can't remember how many balls I had, but let's say I had 4 balls. I was so close to not having to use the 4th ball. I don't know why. I was like, no, I won't use all the balls. I'll save one and make my sleeves short. But I had no plans for this 4th ball if I didn't use it in the jumper. And it's just sat in my stash. And I have no idea why I decided to do it. But anyway, the sleeves, again, the sleeves ended about here. So it's really warm. So if it was that cold that you would wear a jumper that's so warm, you don't want all of this part of your arm to be cold. But if it's kind of spring, warm day, when I get mildly warm, this is the itchiest thing on the planet. So I wouldn't wear that. So in the end, I ripped out the sleeves and I knitted an extra 5 or 6 inches from here and up. You can tell that there's a difference. I'm not sure why. I checked the needles that I used, so they're the correct needles, and it's the same yarn. It's not even a dye lot because it's a natural coloured yarn. I did kind of block it. I filled up a bucket with wool wash and warm water and placed the sleeves into the bucket and then rolled them up in a towel and laid it flat. So I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it's because I've washed it, I think, twice, and so this has become more fluffy, and that one's only technically had 1 blocking. So maybe over time they'll merge together. But it's not horrendously obvious that you'd go, wow, what have you done? And now I can wear it and it's really cold and my whole arm is warm. So that's marvellous. And that used 30 grams of yarn. So that cancels out the 20 grams from here. So they were my little amendments that I did this month. And if you've been watching a while, you'll know the 2 jumper / cardigan projects that I did this month. I will not put it on because I'm quite comfortable, but you can see it in my last 2 videos. This one is my Vintersol by Jennifer Steingass. Oh, it's so beautiful. This one used, let me have a look, 350 grams of Lettlopi. I mentioned the colours and everything on the video that I talked about this in, so if you are interested I'll try and link it here somewhere, or you can just go back to the one that has the picture of me wearing it. I really love this jumper. I won't talk in depth about them because I already have, but I adjusted the yoke instead of it being a hybrid where I knitted the yoke from the bottom up and then knitted the body from the top down. I just knit the whole jumper from the top down, and I think it worked out splendidly. Yes, very happy with this, and very happy that I finally used this yarn, which was one of the first yarns that I ever purchased, and had planned to make this jumper and then never did. And now I have. So very good start to January. I will have some tea. One moment. The sun is going now. Come back. And I will also not be able to put this one on because it gets all scrumpled up with anything if you wear it underneath. But again, I just talked about this one. This one is my vintage cardigan. I just made this one and I did a whole video all about it. It's a 1950s, I think, 1950s vintage pattern. I used, wouldn't you know, Yarnhome. This one was their European wool. Apparently DK, light worsted, but more like Aran bulky. And it's so sheepy, it's insane. It's how I imagine if I was hugging a sheep. This is how a sheep would smell. I have blocked it once, but I'm considering blocking it again because it's actually quite overwhelming. And when I'm wearing it and I get warm, again, very, very warm wool. When I get warm, it's like I am the sheep and I am exuding sheepish smells. It's quite bizarre, but it's lovely. And this one used 380 grams of yarn. So in total, for the whole of January, I finished knitting 760 grams of wool. I am delighted with myself with that because that's a lot of wool. Last year I knitted about 4 kilos in the whole year, and I knitted like a mad woman. So the fact that I've already knocked out 760 is quite exciting. And I have so many more planned. I'll get some more tea. I have definitely knitted more than that this month, which probably explains why I'm having some knitting injuries. Yeah, I won't go into it because I know I've kind of bored you with it multiple times, but usually my forearms hurt and my pointer finger. But I was knitting yesterday and my thumbs all the way up on both sides are so sore. I can't even hold a pen or a needle and thread because this motion is very painful. So I'm not loving that. I have no idea what I did. I ironically just watched a Nimble Needles podcast episode about ergonomic, like sitting and knitting, and he was mentioning thumb pain, and I jinxed it obviously because I thought, oh, I've never had thumb pain, that sounds horrible. Now, out of the blue, I'm not even knitting in a different way. I'm sitting in the same place, using the same needles that I've been using, knitting on the same pattern. I've no idea what changed, but I'm currently on a knitting hiatus, so I'm not sure what February will look like regarding my knitting, because I obviously have to slow down and probably find a new hobby to intersperse. Like, I don't knit that, I was gonna say I don't knit that much, I do. Maybe like 2 hours or 4 hours in a day, but distributed. Like in the morning I might do an hour, maybe at lunch I'll do an hour, and then maybe in the evening from about 8 until 10 or 7 till 9 I'll knit. So there are big gaps. I do take breaks, so I don't really know what the problem is, but I'm going to physiotherapists next week. Maybe they can help and explain what's going on. Yes, tea. Okay, I just wanted to show you a couple of things I have been knitting on additionally this month, and I'll just show you. I did mention that I was knitting my husband a sweater, and it's like the curse of a husband sweater. So here it is. I've now learned it's pronounced Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil Pullover by Anna, Husfeld, and I procrastinated for about 2 weeks on knitting this. It's really pretty, the colour is lovely, and it looks really nice, and the body is fitting. The neck is not fitting, the neck is like right up here, and I did short rows, and I don't know why the neck is like... I'm hoping that the sleeves and the weight of the rest of the jumper will pull it down, but at the moment that's really bothering me. I don't know why the neck is so high up. And my other problem that I just encountered, because I decided, right, I have to work on this jumper. I've got like this far on the body, and I'm so bored of just knitting this same repeat of basically knitting. I've realised I like lace, I like colour work, I like interspersing texture. I really don't like just knitting. Even knitting one and purling another is entertaining enough, but not just knitting round, round, round. This one has a cable, which is very pretty, but it's a pain to actually knit. For me personally, I have not got this understanding of how to do it without a cable needle, and the cable needle is driving me mental. So I thought I'll take a break from this part of the jumper and do the sleeves. And I cast on, well, I picked up the stitches that were on hold and I knitted, and I'll try and put the video in if I remember, but they were enormous. I knitted a decent amount, like it came to about here, but it was huge. And I checked my gauge because I already knew that the gauge for the pattern is 18 stitches and I was getting 20. So that's why the jumper body has actually come out a bit smaller, but that's all right. But the sleeves are also 20 stitches instead of 18, and they were still huge. And I checked the amount of stitches and I had the right amount of stitches, and I'm not sure if maybe perhaps Anna makes a smaller gauge when she knits her sleeves. I don't know. I'm not blaming her. She's marvellous, her patterns are marvellous, but me and the pattern, or me and husband jumpers are not working out together. I did cross-reference about 5 patterns that I have with using Lettlopi or using, this one's the Yerbo Sphinx Ul, which is similar-ish to Lettlopi, and it is the recommended yarn for the pattern. And I checked several patterns and none of them had the same amount of stitches as this one does for the sleeves, which was interesting because when he was wearing, he put it on and I pinched out like this how much fabric was too much and counted the stitches, and it was roughly like 20 stitches I would need to remove. So I jotted that down. This is size 4 and the amount of stitches that I would need is for the size 1 sleeve, which I thought was strange until I looked at some other patterns and saw that they all had roughly that recommendation for stitches for a size equivalent of size 4. So that confused me, but also made me feel better that I wasn't just completely doing these sleeves horrendously wrong, because other patterns have the same stitch count as what I was expecting this one to have. So after an entire day of knitting, I had to rip it all back. So this has gone back into the naughty corner because it took 2 weeks to get the enthusiasm to knit the sleeve. Then I did knit the sleeve and it came out ginormous, and then I ripped it out. So yeah. I even procrastinated doing these sleeves by knitting on these sleeves and the other sleeves instead of just doing these. So technically I have knitted all of this in January and half a sleeve, but perhaps in February I'll get somewhere, or maybe after March. I want to knit the next project I'm going to briefly show you. I want that one finished for my birthday, which is in March. So I've only got like 5 weeks or so to get that one finished. So this one might just wait until after then. But yeah, I'm gonna have to do some kind of quick decrease because I've already got the amount of stitches required. So I'll have to knock out 20 stitches pretty early on. Hopefully that doesn't look really weird. But if I had been on gauge, the sleeve would have been even more enormous. So don't know what's going on there. But I feel a bit bad, like I'm dissing Anna, and I'm not, because I love her and I love her. She has a podcast, by the way. But I think I'm just, for some reason, not, our gauges or our ways of knitting are not quite the same. Like I've never had a neck that sat up like this, and I've never had this problem with the sleeve. Usually it's the opposite. So, don't know. But alas, I will come back to this. Now, the other pattern. The other one I wasn't going to show you yet, because it's going to be part of my next vintage knit. But seeing as you've already seen the original version of it, I thought I'd show you something that I found quite funny. So, if you remember, I started this vintage knitting pattern sometime last year, and I was having a bit of a mad time trying to get gauge. Shocking. Every time I look at this, I fall back in love with it. I think it's so beautiful. But as you can see, this is the front panel, and it's tiny. There. If I get it over here, then it's quite a mission to get it over here. And if there's 2 people, like my mum was here, she held it, and I held it up here, and it was a struggle to get around. And the bottom part of the ribbing, that does not go around me. I don't know how I'm going to show you this because it's better if I do it flat. Maybe I'll insert a video if I can't manage it, but I had to put this aside because I was getting upset that it wasn't going to fit, and I was messing around with different yarns, and I finally got one that I really liked the gauge and I really liked how it looked. But it's on 2.25, I think, 2.5 maybe millimeter needles, which is tiny, and the pattern is for a 4mm needle, or 3.75 I think. And basically I thought, if I knit another back panel and 2 arms and then I can't wear it, and I did all of that work and seaming it together and everything, then I'm gonna cry for my lifetime. Not being dramatic. So I put it aside and cast on again, but following the pattern properly. This one I did a swatch and I checked to make sure how many stitches I was going to get, and the bust for that was 36 inches, and I thought, no, I need 32, so I cut out 2 of the panels, and yeah, alas, it does not fit. So that was terrible calculations, and another example of when I try to do a gauge swatch and make calculations and then knit something and it comes out completely different. So this time I ordered again sport weight or light sport weight yarn and followed the pattern. I even used almost the same needle size. I did a 3.25 and a 3.5 needle because I am now learning if I purl with my with a smaller needle and knit with a bigger needle, it evens itself out and it works. So that's what I did, because this yarn is a bit thicker than the recommended, and also I don't necessarily need a 36-inch bust. So I was fine if it came out a bit smaller. Don't think it will. I started on the sleeve this time. It's a bit of a strange shape, but I think it's because my row gauge is crazy off. Because this sleeve that's supposed to end about here, it's going to end about there. But this is the sleeve. And wouldn't you know, I'm using Yarnhome. Yarnhome wool again. So if you can see, I'll try and stand up and not talk. Said sleeve, this is the body. Yeah. That's not working. I will show you on a video. The sleeve is like bigger than the body that I knitted, which is kind of hilarious. So maybe that shows it a bit better. So I have two thoughts. I'm thinking either after I have completed this one and we see what the size is like, either I will rip this out and turn this into the sleeve and knit it again and knit the body as per pattern in these yarns and then sew them together, or I'll just see what happens if I knit this and then add this little section down the side, as I've mentioned a few times, adding an additional panel to this to make sure it actually goes around my body. But I'll worry about that one later. And I've already cast on and I'm up to this colour. Yeah, I'm up to this colour on my second sleeve, and then I will cast on the body, and I'm thinking about trying to knit the body in the round. Mainly because although I do actually quite like purling at the moment, I think the purling is causing some pain. So I'm going to just try and do it in the round and knit it up until here, where I then do this kind of pattern. In fact, I can show you. Up until here, and then I'll knit flat. And then I can attach in sleeves and then seam it together. That is the plan. And then hopefully I can have this for my birthday. I hope I didn't confuse you too much going between the two. I wasn't going to show this one at all because it was for my vintage episode. But I thought I'd show you anyway because I've been knitting on this throughout January. Okay, I don't think I have anything else to add to this video. Yeah, I think I'm going to make this video short and sweet, even though you might not have thought that, considering how much I just talked. But that is everything for my January stash busting, stash tackling, and what I've been doing. And yeah, we'll see how my knitting progresses in February. Hopefully my hands and elbows and wrists and all of it feel better soon. Do you have any other hobby ideas I can try? I have got a loom, which is what's sitting here, and it's very, very old. And I contacted the company when I got it because I couldn't see any instructions or anything about this loom, and they said it's not even in their catalogues anymore and that they think it's from the 40s or the 50s and they don't make it anymore. But it's similar to one that they have, but then all of the instructions are in German and the videos are terrible on YouTube. So I think I'm going to have a look at how other looms are set up. It's a rigid heddle loom, and see how to use it. And then maybe it's missing some parts, I think, and it falls apart if you touch it. So I need to get some clamps to hold it in place. And then maybe I'll give that a go. That might rest my weary limbs. I do have some embroidery. If you are watching, Kelly from Kel Knits, she has a lovely podcast. You should go check her out actually. She's in Australia. And she has mentioned embroidery several times. Every time I watch, I think, oh, I really need to pick up my embroidery. And then I don't. So perhaps I can try doing that in my breaks. It's just not as relaxing as knitting. She says most of my knitting drives me up the wall, but I don't know. It doesn't have quite the same va-va-voom as knitting, but it might have to be my new go-to. And I do have half a project finished that I really need to just finish, and I have two that I have finished, but I'm not sure what to do with them because they're quite small. I don't know, now I'm just talking out loud. So yeah, what other hobbies are you guys up to? I have tried crochet, but that really hurts my hands, so unless I know, or you know, of an ergonomic way to do it, I won't be doing crochet anytime soon. But yeah, maybe weaving, maybe embroidery. Any other ideas? Let me know. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to wind this up, and I will see you next time. Have a nice weekend. Bye!